Have you ever taken a photo and had to delete it because it didn't turn out quite how you'd want it to? Were there times when you wished you could change the background because there was a photo bomber behind you? Well, keep watching. Maybe there's a way to save all those photos after all. If you haven't heard about photo editing, it's about altering images to enhance it or add captions or in other cases, even make it something else entirely. It is pretty widespread nowadays and many even edit photos on their smartphones, which is fine, but if you want more comprehensive editing and professional results, you need to use a desktop program. And while there are a plethora of programs you can use, the most popular arguably is Adobe Photoshop. Adobe Photoshop is widely used not just for image editing, retouching and creating image compositions, but also for other useful things like adding graphics and effects to videos and many other uses. Digital or scanned images can be edited for use digitally, online, or in print. Even website layouts can be created within Photoshop. Standalone graphics can also be created and exported for use within other programs. For example, you can create images in Photoshop and use them in Premiere or After Effects as graphics in your videos. In this video, we will learn about the fundamentals to prepare you for the tasks ahead. We won't be able to cover everything here, but if you finish this video, you'll be able to do the basic things in editing photos. So, let's start. Now, before we move on to actual editing or creating images, let's quickly familiarize ourselves with the interface of the program together with its features. So open up Adobe Photoshop, and if your screen looks different than mine, then you just need to click here on Window, Workspace, then Reset Essentials or Essentials Default, and then our screen should look the same. Please note, I'm using Photoshop CC version 2019, so if you have a different version, or if your screen has a smaller or larger resolution than mine, then there will be a few differences, but that should work fine as long as you can see the same thing I'm pointing at on your screen. First, we need to learn how to make a new file for our project. So go to File, New, and you will be presented with this window. It contains all the settings for your new project. Type in the name of your project. Mine will be Sample Image for this tutorial. And then the width and the height. Now this matters depending on where you're trying to use it. For example, if you're making a logo or creating an image to go on Instagram or Twitter, then you may need to match image sizes for a particular platform. But for now, we'll be using 1920 by 1080 pixels. That's the same as Full HD resolution, so if you view it on a 1080p or a Full HD screen, it will be shown full screen without any scaling, meaning your image will not be stretched or compressed when viewing it full screen. Later on, you can customize it to whatever size you want for many different purposes. I use pixels for my units because I'm using most of my images in their digital form. But if you want to match your image size for print media, you can choose metric or other units of measurement that might make more sense for you. I'm gonna choose landscape here since I want my image to be horizontal. Choose portrait if you're creating an image that needs a vertical canvas. Resolution is how densely packed the pixels in your image will be. The higher the number, the more tightly packed the pixels are, which is relevant if you're planning to print your image. You don't have to overthink this. 72 pixels per inch is fine, but I mostly use 300 pixels per inch just to be safe and to avoid blurry images in case I print it out later on. So you just use whatever works for you. For this video, we'll use RGB as it's used in most gadgets. So if you want to make sure your colors will look correct on most screens, use RGB. You may use other color modes if you're printing, but that's outside the scope of this video. You may watch my upcoming videos because I will tackle them there. I use 16-bit because I work with RAW images, but if you're just using JPEG images from your smartphones, just use 8-bit so you'll get smaller file sizes. And JPEGs can't utilize 16-bit anyway, it's just a waste of space. For background contents, we'll use the default white background. No need to touch the other settings, so for now just click Create, or in other versions, just click OK. And you will see a blank white canvas. This is where your images go. As you get better and learn more about editing photos, You will be rearranging the tabs and menus around, but for now we will stick with the default setup. To the right, you will see the Layers tab where your layers will get organized. Later, you will see that this window is a very essential part of editing in Photoshop, and you will be using this most of the time, because this shows us all the layers and everything that is included in your project. So everything you add to your project, you will see them appear in the Layers tab. For this example, let's drag an image from our folder and drop it onto the canvas. You'll notice it's added to the Layers tab. Right now, you don't need to memorize anything. These are the most basic things and you will learn them effortlessly after a while because you will be using them most of the time. Now we see that the Layers tab contains our image that we dropped into the project and another layer called background. This is actually what we configured earlier when setting up a new project file. When we clicked on Create, it added what we configured here into the Layers tab and called it background. You will notice it has a lock symbol next to it. If we want to make any changes, we need to unlock it first by clicking the lock icon. Now that the lock icon is gone, it's now turned into an ordinary layer. And we can now make changes to it if you want to. Next is our toolbox. The tools you will use most of the time are located here. First from the top is the Move tool. Just click on it, and you will notice that the cursor changed its appearance. Now click and drag the image to where you want to move it. You can also use a shortcut to quickly switch to the Move tool. Just press V on your keyboard, and just like before, it changed its appearance. And now you can use it to move images around your canvas. Next is the Mark key or the Selection tool. Shortcut for it is M on your keyboard. It is used to make a selection. So if you wanted to select a part of your image and erase everything in that area, just click and drag and release it when you're satisfied with the selection. Everything inside this box is now selected. So if you wanted to erase everything inside this box, just click on the Eraser tool or press E on your keyboard and erase everything inside your selection. But if you wanted to erase objects outside of your selection, go back to the Mark key tool and right-click, choose Select Inverse. Now go back to the Eraser tool. This time you see it's not affecting anything inside the selection. Instead, it's erasing everything outside the selection. Now let's try the Brush tool. The shortcut is B. Click here to choose a color and make a few brush strokes. As you can see, it affects only the outside of my selection, because we're still on the Select Inverse mode. If you want to go back to normal, press M again to go back to the Selection tool, and click on Select Inverse again to go back to normal. After you're done and you want to get rid of the selection, just go to Select menu and choose Deselect, or simply press Ctrl D to deselect. Another basic tool is the Crop tool, and it does exactly that. It crops your image. There are several ways to crop an image, but one easy way is to just click on the Crop tool, make your adjustments, and then press Enter. You can revert or undo that by going to Edit and clicking on Undo, or by using the shortcut Ctrl Z. And finally, the Text tool. Whenever you want to add text, just click on the Text tool and then type whatever and press the Escape key. If you want to edit or change the text, to make sure the Text tool is still active and that the text you want to edit is the active layer. Always remember, whatever is highlighted in the Layers tab is the active layer, so make sure it's highlighted and then click on the text and type the changes. Maybe something appropriate. Or something even more appropriate. Press the Escape key when you're done. If you want to change its orientation, just click Ctrl T, then click and drag it to adjust. Press Enter when you're done. We have a lot more tools and features we can use here in Photoshop, but for now, these are the most basic tools you need, and you will use these on the majority of your projects. Just above the toolbar is the Options bar. Here you can set options for the tool currently selected. For example, if you selected the Text tool, you can change the fonts and the font size through the Options bar. And just above the Options bar is the Menu bar, and this contains almost everything. This is the most basic part of the interface. Almost all of the features, commands, and settings, you can access them from the menu bar, including opening and saving your project. Although the most common and important commands and features have their own hotkeys. So you just need to press a key or combination of keys instead of dragging your cursor all the way up and clicking several times. Like for example, earlier we could have simply pressed Ctrl Z instead of going to Edit menu and selecting Undo. Many other features are available in Photoshop, but these are the most fundamental. The others you can learn them along the way, and you can watch my other videos about photo editing to see them in action. Now that we are familiar with the very basics, we can now apply them to edit some photos. Let's open up an image by pressing Ctrl O. As you can see, the butterfly in the photo is tilted forward. But what if we wanted it to be lined up with the horizon? All we need to do is use the crop tool. So press C. Now look at the options bar. We have an option here called straighten. So let's click on that to enable it. Now how this works is, when you draw a line with the straighten option enabled, Photoshop will adjust the whole image based on that line. So let's try that. I'd like to draw from here to there. And as you can see, Photoshop has straightened our image based on the line we drew. But what if I wanted it tilted back a little? Well, there's also a way to do that by manually adjusting the tilt using this same tool. Let's just close this image by clicking here, and we'll skip on saving it. Now let's open that same image. Click on the crop tool, only this time we'll place our cursor outside the canvas near the corner, and when you see your cursor change to this, just click and drag. Adjust it to tilt back a little. Also, let's move the image by clicking on the image itself and dragging it, maybe to the middle of the frame. There. And press enter. Now there's this little problem. We now have an empty space inside our frame. And not only that, a large part of our image has been cropped out. That flower, which was an important part of this image, is gone almost entirely, and our image is practically ruined. Luckily, this version of Photoshop has a neat solution to that. So let's do that again. Once again, close that image. And then reopen it. With the crop tool active, in the options bar, we can see a feature called Content Aware. And if you click on that to enable it, what it does is fill those empty spaces for us. So let's make our adjustments like before. And press enter. As you can see, all those empty spaces before are now filled out nicely. Most people won't even be able to tell that those weren't part of the original image. Problem solved. But of course, although Photoshop has very good algorithms, there are still instances when this method won't work, depending on the content of your image and how much change you're making. So make sure you inspect your image before making your changes permanent. It is best to save to a new file instead of overwriting to your old file. So in case you mess up, the worst case is that you just have to redo your editing instead of losing the image entirely. Now to do that, just go to File, and then Save As, or press Shift-Ctrl S. Choose a new file name and then click Save. Later in the video, we will learn more about saving your projects. But for now, let's move on to our next image. So let's open the file. This time we'll try to apply all the things we learned. Let's see if we can make this image better, but just using the very basic tools in Photoshop. The first thing I'd like to change in this photo is its alignment. I would prefer it to be aligned with the horizon. As we learned before, there's an easy way to do that by using the crop tool. So let's crop and straighten it. I will enable Content Aware to assist us. And I would like to adjust the frame. There. Let's press enter to accept the changes. Now looking at the image, we can see it's underexposed and the colors are quite dull. By now, we already know how to fix those, so let's get to it. There are a few ways to make adjustments to your image. One way is by going to the image menu and selecting your adjustments. What that does is make direct changes to the image, and that means once you save the file and exit Photoshop, those changes will be permanent, and you cannot undo those adjustments anymore. That's all well and good if you're certain you're not going to revert back your changes in the future. But if it's an important photo, You may want to use a non-destructive method of applying adjustments, and that is by creating adjustment layers. What this does is add another layer for every adjustment you make so you can revert back in the event you want to revise adjustments in the future. To make an adjustment layer, click this icon at the bottom of the Layers tab. Now you see a layer has been added to our Layers tab, and a window just popped out. Now let's use it to adjust exposure. You can hide this window by clicking on the double chevron. Now let's add another adjustment layer, but this time for saturation. Let's turn it up all the way to 50. And then hide the window. Add another layer for vibrance. Adjust both and hide a window. Let's add one final adjustment layer for contrast. Make the necessary adjustments. And now we have a much better image in my opinion. What we did was make non-destructive adjustments, meaning we can easily revert back to our changes whenever we want. And one quick way to do that is by clicking the visibility icon on the Layers tab. If the icon is visible, then the layer is visible in the project. But if the icon is hidden, that whole layer is also hidden. And since the adjustments we made earlier are layers, whenever we hide them, we are effectively reverting to our original image. I'll be teaching more advanced techniques using adjustment layers in upcoming videos, so don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you want to learn more. Now let's add text. Something like that maybe. And then probably add some strokes and a simple glow. And there you are, a much improved image by just using the basic tools in Photoshop. Now I would recommend you save the project as a PSD file in case you want to revise your adjustments later on. To do that, go to File, Save As, and on Save As type, choose Photoshop.psd. After that, you can export the image by going to File, Export, and Export As, or by simply pressing Alt-Shift-Control-W. Choose JPEG for your format and click Export All. I hope you learned something from this video, and if you want to see more Photoshop and other tutorials, subscribe to my channel and click on the notification bell so you'll be notified when I upload more tips and tricks to make your images look better, fix troublesome photos, and even create graphics. So don't delete those pictures just yet. Leave your comments below and watch more of my videos. Maybe we can still do something to make that precious moment of yours look even more memorable. Have fun editing and see you on my next video.